Hi. Yeah, we're gonna extrude a city skyline today. I have given you a file called isometric base to download on the assignment, and when you open it up, it should look something like this. And I'm gonna zoom out and move my camera over, and behold, there is our first building of our Extrusion City. A couple of things before we begin. I've already started this one extrusion for you. You want to triple check and make sure that you are in the polygon mode here on the left. So previously we've worked with the model mode. Model mode is great if you're dealing with the whole model, but because we're extruding individual polygons, we need to be in the polygon mode. Another important thing too is that if you don't have the cube selected here on the right, like if it looks like this, it won't let you select anything. So you have to actually like click on the cube, make sure you're in the polygon mode, and then I'm going to make sure that I'm also using the selection tool, live selection tool. And notice the keyboard shortcut is the number 9 on the keyboard. So that's a good keyboard shortcut to know because I'm constantly switching to the selection tool. Next thing I want to do is zoom in to see mostly this building. So I'm going to click and drag on my zoom tool, zoom in. I'm going to move my whole city over here by dragging the camera view. Okay. The reason why I zoom in is because you'll notice as you work and practice that as you hover over the arrows, when you go to extrude things, they can get in the way. And by zooming in, it kind of makes the arrows smaller compared to the building. Okay, so I've got my selection tool. I'm just gonna click once on that first window that I want to select. I'm holding down the shift key, and I'm just gonna click on 8 windows. Okay, so I was holding on shift while I clicked on those. Now I'm let go of shift. I'm gonna hit the D key on the keyboard. So just once, hit D. Now I have this little extrude tool, D for extrude. So if I click and drag this to the right, they'll extrude out. If I drag to the left, they'll extrude in. So just a nice, easy way to make some windows is to extrude some of those squares. Next thing we're gonna do is make these windows light up. Right now, if I rendered this scene, you notice they just look like little dents, but we want these to actually be lit. So I'll click in this window to get my editor back. I'm going to use the selection tool or hit the 9 key on the keyboard and just select those windows. So I had mine selected already. Okay. Now I'm going to choose create on the lower left here and then choose new material. And because my screen is so low resolution right now, I'm going to double click on the material so you could see my material editor window nice and big. And look over here on the left, make sure that you're under luminance. So click on luminance so it's orange. And we're going to add a color to luminance. So I'll pick like one of these yellow colors here. So you pick your hue first. And it still looks white because my saturation is all the way down. And then the value of it right now is really bright. So I will turn this down. And the reason why nothing's changing is I don't have luminance checked. So check luminance, like so. Now from here, I'm going to close this. So make sure you look under luminance, make sure it's checked, and then add a color to it. Now you can click and drag it and drop it in the window. And if I render this now, you can see I have little lights in my window. So fun, so cool. Okay, next, let's zoom out a little bit. I'm gonna extrude a new building, my second building. So there's a couple things I need to triple check before I move on. I've selected cube, yep. I'm in the polygon mode, yep. And I've got my selection tool. So I'll click on the polygon I want to extrude. Now I'll hit the D key, D, and then click and drag this one to the right. And I'll make it a little taller than my last one, right about there, and zoom out. Okay, so the question is, how did I get these windows? How did I cut up? Because when I originally extruded this, it does not have windows. I had to add these. So let's add some windows. To do that, we're basically going to cut up with the knife tool these two polygons here. So because I want to deal with both of these at once, I'm going to select the selection tool and then click once on my left polygon. On the right side, I'll shift click to select both. The knife tool can be gotten with the K key on your keyboard. So if you hit K on your keyboard, that switches to knife, and you have knife options on the lower right. And there's a few things we need to change here on the lower right here. So if you don't see this, you likely do not have the knife tool selected. So we're going to hit K, and under mode, now there's two modes right next to each other. There's this mode menu and this mode drop-down box. We want this mode box that says loop. We're going to change that to plane. And from here, I'm going to make sure that slice is checked. And under cuts, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do 4 cuts. Because that's how many I cut in the other one. Okay, so that's it. Now what I'll do is just click and watch what happens when I hover over this area. Let me just fix one thing here. When I hover over, it looks like it's going to make these cuts across this whole thing. But because I have restrict to selection checked, it's only going to cut the thing I've selected. So I'll click once. And it made 4 cuts, but it didn't cut the right side. So why is that? In the knife options, down here under plane, because remember we're in the plane mode, the XY plane is what was cut. So if we look at our little navigator here, our key, here is X and Y. So yes, in this left-right direction here, it cut these vertical lines. I'm now going to switch plane to YZ, and now it's going to cut along this axis. And you just click anywhere in here, and it cuts it into 4 cuts. And they're all equally wide. Then lastly, to cut the levels, I'm going to choose the last plane, which is XZ. So the XZ, when I hover over it, now this is actually going to cut both sides at once. That's because of the plane we're on. Like so. So once you've made your cuts, now it's a matter of going back, grabbing the selection tool, selecting the windows you want to extrude. So I'm going to hold down Shift, like so. I'm even going to extrude that door as well. So notice too, when I hover over the arrow, it doesn't work. But when the second I come over and hover over the square, it turns white. That white square is a good thing. So lastly, click on the door. Then hit the D key to extrude. And then click and drag to the left to extrude them in. Awesome. That's it. And from here, I could drag this material, drop it onto here if I want. For this building, I want to have yellow lights, yellow windows. Maybe for this building, I want blue windows. So another easy way to copy something is to hold down the Control key. Control, and then if you click and drag this material, it will copy the material. And then I can just come up here and adjust the luminance color. So we'll go purple. Now I'll drop material 1 onto my windows. And I really only need to look at these 2 buildings, right? I don't need to spend any extra time rendering all this other stuff over here. So to do that, I'm going to click and hold on this button here to render the region. Okay, so now when I render the region, I can just click and drag over that area I want to see, and it will just render that area. Okay, looking great so far. Next, selection tool. Let's go in the back here, and we're going to make a skyscraper. And what I mean by that is that we're going to have a staggered, it's wide on the bottom and it gets thinner as you go up. So to begin extruding, we'll hit the D key on the keyboard. Click and drag that to the right. We'll go way up. Okay. Let me zoom out so you can see this. I don't want it to be so... So I'll make it roughly the same height as that second building we made. So that's with the D key. Now we're going to switch to inner extrude. And I can inner extrude any of these polygons. And before I had, like I selected it first. You don't actually have to select it first. You can just click to select the polygon. And then for the inner extrusion, we're going to click and drag to the left to go in. So we'll see how that looks. If I zoom in a little bit, drag this down, zoom in. Okay. Now I'll hit D to switch to regular extrusion. And the key here is to not drag on the arrow or the cube. So if I drag on the cube, it does this little belly dance thing. I want it to go straight up, not like that. The arrows have a similar effect. We want to extrude, so you drag when it highlights white, click and drag to the right. Now I'll switch back to inner extrusion, I. So if I go to the left, now it shrinks it. The right makes it bigger. So if I want to drop like a cube on top of here, I could. Or maybe this could be like a helicopter landing pad. But we want to keep going in, inner extrude, hit the D key, click and drag to the right. And a quick way to make a spire would be to make like a really thin inner extrusion. So I to inner extrude, make it really small. And we'll zoom in again. And this one I really got to zoom in so I can actually select it. To the right. And if we zoom out, oh, probably a little too big. That's okay. You can also dial in like the numbers itself. So when I drag it up, I could see, if you look in the lower right, see we're offset under extrude. So I could say, well, if that's 60, then maybe I just want to go up 10 more clicks. So I'll just type in 70. And that's a more exact extrusion. Okay, so now that we've made the exterior of the building, now I could start slicing it up. You do not want to, like you wouldn't want to do inner extrusions on this building right now after the fact, because watch what happens. If you do an inner extrusion here, whoops, click to select inner extrusion. Notice that it's starting to like do some unpredictable things. D, when you drag up, another inner extrusion. So now it starts getting really weird, and yeah. So anyways, let's cut this one up. I'm going to select, for this, I think I'm going to do this one floor at a time here. So I'm going to do this bottom chunk first. So I selected these two polygons. K to do the knife tool. How many cuts do we want? This is going to have more than 4 stories. So I'm going to do like 6 cuts here. Like so. And now I'll switch the plane. I don't want to do 6 cuts vertically, so I'll probably want to do, I don't know, maybe just 2. And then I think it's YZ. There you go. So there's 2 there. Now I need to do XY. Okay. So usually, especially if you want to cut in every axis, you got to change these 3 plane values. So now I'll go back, select my selection tool, click on those 2 front ones, K for the knife tool, and then just start cutting it up. So I might only do 1 cut for this, cross on the right, like so. Yeah, a quick way to make a road, if you're going to do a road, is to, well, there's lots of different ways to represent it. Probably what I'll do is grab my selection tool and select these guys. I'll do a downward extrusion So D key and then click and drag to the, what is that, the left? Like so. I'm gonna get rid of these polygons here. See this little chunk? You just click on it once and hit delete. Let's see, polygon mode, select. Well, I don't want to get too fancy here. Here we go. I'm going to make a black material. Look under color. And for black, I mean, you're just going to turn the hue up to something, saturation up, but then value way down. So it should have some color. And then you can drop it right there. Another awesome way to add materials to something is I have a photograph of the sidewalk outside. I'll show you that. Desktop. I have this texture folder. And if we look at a preview, yeah, I want to drop this texture. Well, maybe this one. 9991 on the side of the building. So I have this text folder in my desktop folder. So to add that as this material, let's just make the new material. We're going to create new material. And I'll double click on the material. And rather than add a color or add luminance, we're going to go back to color. And then under color and under brightness is this texture option. So we're going to click on this ellipses here on the right. And find that file. Click open. It'll warn you it's not in the search path. That's okay. Just say yes. And that's it. Now I'll close this and click and drag it. Oh, first I got to tell it what polygon do I actually want to affect here. So I'm going to grab my selection tool and just select ones I want. Command click to deselect. Whoops. Shift click. Shift. Like so. I also want to consider the windowsills, so don't forget those guys. Okay, I'll zoom out and grab, hold down shift. Just dragging as I do this. So I think I've got all my polygons. And if you've watched to this far, congratulations. Now I'll drop that concrete material onto the side of my building. And I've got this problem where, if you look at it, it's like stretching it out. It's kind of like turning the little dots into lines. That's kind of some interesting problems here. That's fine. So anyways, back to where we were. If you look down here, after you've dropped that concrete material, you can look down and change your projection. So instead of UVW mapping, you can choose cubic, and then it will put that there. And this is so not even a requirement, but I'm going to turn down the length to 20, the length V to 20, and I'm going to turn on seamless. And now I got this cool little concrete building. Look at that. Yeah. So have fun extruding, and I want to see windows on all the buildings, and at least 3 buildings, and hopefully some clouds or something. So hope you enjoyed.